And with the Suns, when you have the best record in the league coming off a finals appearance and lose the way that they did in the playoffs, you don't just, sweep that, dust that thing under the rug and keep on moving. No, that is the kind of, when you get kicked in the lower region like that, the pain endures, that lingers. And
we saw that in Utah last year.
We saw in Utah, we've talked about the 06 going into, the 07 Mavs. And, you have to do something to kind of jolt the franchise, to reinvigorate the franchise. And the way things went down with DeAndre Ayton, where basically we don't think you're a max player. Well, crap. Now we got to give you, we got to sign you to this max because we don't have any choice. Indiana, pushed us into the corner on that. The friction between him and Monty Williams that emerged, like, dude, there's just a lot of weird energy around that franchise, not to mention the whole Sarver situation.
Let me say a couple things about the Suns. You could argue that their incredible dominance in clutch play last year, one of the greatest clutch play teams since we've been keeping clutch play stats, may have masked how actually good of a team they were. That if you played that season out 4 or 5 times, that maybe 64 wins was the best possible thing that could have happened. Maybe they were actually, even though I was incredibly impressed with them throughout the season, I spent a significant amount of time around them. I was impressed with their focus. I was impressed with the way they handled their business. I liked the way that they were built. You could argue that maybe their record wasn't indicative of their actual quality as a contender. I'm not necessarily arguing that, but I've heard it argued. But I also will say a couple of things. Number one, I think Mikal Bridges has more to grow. I don't think he's just a 3-and-D player. I think he has a window to have a bigger role. I think he can be more than he's shown. He had a couple of moments in the playoffs last year where he showed it. I don't know if they're going to design their team in a way that's going to allow him to do that, but I think there's more to Mikal Bridges than just being a dogged defender who hits some corner threes. I think he can do a lot more, and I would encourage them to look for ways to do him more, especially if you're looking to take some of the pressure off of Chris Paul a little bit. I think Mikal Bridges can be more involved in their offense. I think the same thing about DeAndre Ayton. I've thought about this for a couple of years. Now, there are people who are either pro-Ayton or anti-Ayton. I think Bontemps has pointed out, amongst other people, the guy does not get to the line. And that makes it a lot harder to run stuff for him because he doesn't hunt scoring. The guy shoots over 60% and he shoots jumpers. I think you could run some more for him too. So I think that there's potential on that team to be unlocked even beyond what we have seen. And the other thing I'm going to say is, even if they're not going to get Durant, they are still in position to make a trade that could really help them. They have the expiring contract of Dario Saric, who will be back this year. I don't know what he's going to be able to give them coming off the ACL. He will be back. He's a sort of a forgotten man, but because people, they let JaVale McGee go, and it was like, oh my gosh, they just let JaVale McGee. He was a really valuable backup. I was like, well, it's because they're getting Saric back. Like, don't forget about Saric. Mm-hmm. I mean, he should be able to help them. He's a quality player. I'm not going to spend much more time, but he's also a trade chip. They have a number of other tradable contracts like Landry Shamet, Jay Crowder, and they own all of their picks going forward. And they're openly on the record as not being super duper invested in the draft. And even though
interesting strategy,
I agree. Also, they signed Josh Okogie. I know he's been an underachiever. I like him as a player. I'm not going to say more than that, but I think you could present the case that the Suns are not a finished product, either in what their team can do as what their roster actually has and what they can do going forward. One thing to watch, I think, is interesting is, do they sign Cam Johnson, who's extension eligible, to an extension? They are another team that has not paid the luxury tax in over a decade. I think 2010 or 11. I think 2010 was the last time. Actually, I have it right here. I will tell you. The last time they paid the luxury tax was 2010. And so they're going to be in the luxury tax significantly this year. But obviously going forward, that's a question mark, and that will affect. Also, if you sign Cam Johnson to a extension, you make him very hard to trade.
Makes it harder to trade him.
So we'll see what they think about this roster, what they do with that one.
Well, and let's see what happens with DeAndre Ayton too, because they certainly didn't make that a pleasant negotiating experience for anybody involved. Going back all the way to, you reported Brian on it last fall. It wasn't fun then, and it certainly was much less fun the way it was handled, both in the immediate aftermath of that Game 7 loss and then into free agency. So let's see if there's any lingering after effects of that as well. There's just a lot going on there.
All right.
Yeah, and look, I love Bridges too, and I agree with you. I think there's more there, but I also covered a playoff series in which in their last 3 losses, he scored in single digits in each game. He shrunk along with a lot of other guys on that roster, Chris Paul primarily. He shrunk as that series went on against Dallas. Now, young player, you're not always you're not going to be great in every playoff series, but he's got a lot to prove coming off of that. I would say him and Cam Johnson are the 2 still ascending. Well, and Ayton, but I just don't think Ayton's going to be there that much longer.
No, we'll see.
The way those negotiations went down that's not a long-term marriage.
They're definitely a TBD, but the fact that they are a TBD and they haven't gotten better when they have Chris Paul as one of their key pieces who's going into a season where he'll be 38 during next year's playoffs, that makes them a loser for me.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.